Today, we're diving into Sri Vaishnavism, a really deep spiritual philosophy from India. But hey, this isn't just some dry academic topic. At its core, this whole system is designed to answer a question that I think a lot of us feel deep down, even if we can't quite put it into words.
See, what's so interesting is that this philosophy doesn't start with some big abstract decree from the heavens. Nope. It starts right here, on the ground, with a feeling we all know, that nagging sense that no matter what we accomplish, no matter what we buy, something essential is still missing.
You know, one of the core texts just nails this feeling. It calls it a normative form of low-level anxiety. That's it, right? It's this constant background noise, this friction that so often pushes people to start looking for deeper answers, sparking the beginning of a real spiritual search.
All right, so here's our game plan for how we're going to break this down. We'll start with that universal human quest for happiness. Then we'll look at the 5-point spiritual map Sri Vaishnavism gives us. And from there, we'll get into its core ideas about God, our own self, and, the way forward.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to diagnose the problem, right? Why does the happiness we're all chasing in the material world always seem to, slip right through our fingers? Sri Vaishnavism has a really systematic answer for this.
So it systematically breaks down why that happiness is so temporary by pointing out these 7 fundamental flaws. It says material pleasures are, trivial and they just don't last. They take a ton of effort to get, they're often mixed with struggle, and sometimes they even end in pain. But the diagnosis goes even deeper. It suggests this kind of pleasure is actually incompatible with our true nature and is based on a mistaken idea of who we are.
So after laying out the problem, what's the solution? Well, the Artha philosophy offers this really clear, structured framework called the Artha Panchaka. The name itself is a guide. It literally means the 5 things you need to know to find your way on the spiritual path. I love this part. Think of it as a complete spiritual GPS. I mean, it makes sense, right? To get anywhere, you need to know your destination. That's the nature of God. You need to know your current location, the nature of the self. You need a purpose for the journey, life's goal. You need the route to take, the means, and you need to know about potential roadblocks, the obstacles. It's a truly comprehensive map for the journey.
All right, let's start with point number 1 on our map, the destination. What is the Sri Vaishnava view of God, or this ultimate reality? It's really fascinating because it carves out a kind of middle path between 2 other major schools of Indian philosophy.
So this chart here really helps to see where Sri Vaishnavism fits in. On one side, you've got non-dualism, which basically says your individual self is an illusion. You are actually identical to God. On the other extreme, you have dualism, which says God and you are forever and always separate. Sri Vaishnavism comes in the middle with something called Vishishtadvaita, or qualified non-dualism. This view says, hey, God, our souls, and the universe, they're all distinct and real, but at the same time, they're inseparable parts of one single unified whole.
So, to boil it all down, reality is one big thing, and this is the key part, it's a one that's made up of real distinct parts. What that means for you and me is that our individuality isn't some illusion we need to get rid of. It's actually a vital part of a much greater interconnected reality. Okay, so we've talked about the destination. Now let's talk about the traveler on this journey, us, the self, or what's called the jiva. So who are we really according to this philosophy?
And the way they explain this relationship is just beautiful. It's this core analogy, and it's so powerful. The self isn't identical to God, but it's not totally separate either. Instead, each and every soul is like a ray of the sun. Think about it. A ray is distinct from the sun, right? But it comes from the sun. It's made of the exact same light, and it literally cannot exist without it. They're different, yet completely inseparable. So, according to this teaching, our true self, who we really are, is eternal, it's conscious. The problem, what it calls our state of bondage, kicks in when we forget this, and we start thinking we are our temporary body and mind. This mistake is fueled by karma, that cosmic law of action and consequence, which keeps us stuck in a cycle of rebirth. The whole goal, then, is to break free from that cycle and achieve liberation.
Okay, so you might be thinking, if God is this huge, transcendent, supreme reality, how on earth are we supposed to connect with that? Well, Sri Vaishnavism has a great answer. It outlines 5 different ways the divine actually makes itself accessible to us.
These 5 facets kind of range from the most abstract and out there to the most personal and right here.
They include that ultimate transcendental form, these big cosmic manifestations, divine incarnations or avatars, the divine presence that's right there in consecrated icons, and finally, the presence that's dwelling inside our own hearts. Let's just take a quick look at a few of these. First up, you have the most supreme aspect, the para or transcendental form. This is the absolute ultimate reality, described as an ocean of perfection and bliss. It exists way beyond our ideas of time and space. To be honest, it's largely beyond what our human minds can even grasp. But to make that connection easier for us, the divine comes down into our world as what are called avatars, or incarnations. This happens purely out of compassion. It allows the divine to actually interact with the world, protect what's right, and guide humanity. It's a much more personal way to connect.
And then maybe the most accessible form of all is the arca. This is the divine presence made manifest in a consecrated icon you'd find in a temple. The idea is that through sacred rituals, the limitless divine makes itself fully available in a physical form so that anyone, literally anyone, can approach it directly with their devotion and their worship.
All right, so we've got our destination, we know who the traveler is, and we've seen how a connection can be made. So what's the actual path? What's the practical way to move toward that goal of liberation?
And this is where it all comes together. Because ultimately, while all this knowledge gives you the map, the journey itself, that's a journey of the heart. The path is called prapatti, and it just means total self-surrender. It's about shifting from just knowing things in your head to actually building a relationship of love, of service, and a deep gut-level recognition of our complete dependence on the divine, just like that ray of light is totally dependent on the sun.
And that really brings us to this one final powerful question to leave you with. If, as this philosophy suggests, our true nature is an eternal, inseparable part of the divine, like a ray of the sun, then what is our real purpose here? Maybe the whole spiritual journey isn't about becoming something new at all, but about finally remembering and